I'm 50 now, silver peeking through my edges, laugh lines like soft commas around my mouth, but when I close my eyes, I can still feel the weight of that white gown at 21 and the way a secret can walk right up behind you and snatch the air from your lungs. I wasn't a grandmother yet, just a Southside Richmond girl with a good choir voice and a bigger heart, thinking life was about to start on a hillside estate in Virginia. Folks said I glowed. Maybe I did. But if you look close at the memory, you'll see it. A hairline crack in the shine right before everything split. If you're hearing my story, please subscribe so more voices like mine can be heard. Back then, I was the girl who ironed her own dreams, who stitched up other people's hems at my auntie's kitchen table to pay for community college books. My name is Nia, now Grandma Nia at church cookouts. But this part of my life belongs to the younger me who still believed a promise could hold its shape just because you wanted it to. I loved Julian the way a hungry field loves rain. Head tipped back, mouth open, grateful. He was 25, a quiet kind, collar always pressed, words warm as late-night diner coffee. And my best friend, my soul sister since 9th grade, was Laura Jenkins. We braided each other's hair, borrowed each other's lip gloss, held each other's secrets like precious things. If there was a pocket in my heart, Laura's hands had helped sew it. We chose an estate in the hills an hour out from the city. Century-old trees, a stone manor with a porch that wrapped you like a hug, a greenhouse with fogged glass that made everything look softer. We rented it for the weekend so our families could settle in. My mama, who smelled like cocoa butter and peppermint, my Uncle Reggie, who never shows up empty-handed and brought ribs enough to feed a choir, cousins who sang harmony without trying, church folks who keep a casserole pan in the trunk just in case. The night before the wedding, we lined the patio with string lights, cut into Aunt Dee's pecan pie, and let Al Green float over the lawn. I was 21 and certain I'd found my forever. I come from a people who anchor joy with ritual. Sunday dinner was our weekly altar. Skillet cornbread hissing hello, collards tender with a touch of smoke, sweet tea beating sweat on mason jars. The TV turned down low while my mama's gospel spilled out from the kitchen. At Miss Clarissa's beauty salon, we'd sit under those hooded dryers and catch the news faster than the radio could send it. The barbershop 2 doors down would spill debate into the street about the game and the schools and who owed who $5. That's where I learned this. Community sees you. They cheer. They warn. And they don't forget. Julian fit right in, smiling at my uncles, carrying my granny's plate without being asked, sidestepping my cousins, teasing with a laugh. He looked at me like I was a hymn he wanted to learn by heart. Laura flitted around me all night, checking my veil, smoothing my train, holding my hand the way girls do when they've crossed from childhood into something that looks like promise. "You ready, Nia?" she whispered, eyes shining. "I am," I said, and I meant it with every beat in my body. I didn't have the language then for what my bones were telling me, but I had a habit I learned from my granddaddy who ran a corner store off Hull Street. He kept a little spiral notebook in his shirt pocket and wrote down what went in and what went out. Around 19, after a boy with sweet talk left me square with an empty wallet and a thin apology, I started keeping my own notebook. Not to catch folks. To catch myself. When something felt off, I wrote it down so my heart couldn't lie to me later. The first thing I wrote that weekend was small. The rehearsal dinner had slid into laughter and the soft clink of forks against dessert plates when Julian disappeared. To check in with Mama. 10 minutes is a phone call. 20 is a conversation. 30 is something else. When he got back, his smile lagged behind his face. I tucked away a line. "J long call, off energy." Laura was gone for a spell too. Came back flushed, hair a little mussed, laughing too loud at something the bandleader said. I added another line. "L missing, returns glossy." Then I closed the notebook with a quiet click, because joy deserves room to dance even when nerves are whispering from the corner. The morning got born slow. Sunlight easing through curtains, birds gossiping like church mothers after service. Laura knocked first, balancing a breakfast tray like a halo. Grits with a generous butter pat, a blueberry muffin sliced open and spread with love, diner coffee the way I like it, too much cream because I don't apologize for sweetness. "You're glowing," she said, fastening the tiny pearls at my nape. "We made it, girl." I hugged her, let her perfume, something powdery with a flirt of cherry, settle on my shoulder. She was my mirror. She was my witness. She was what I thought my safe. Outside, the chairs formed neat rows in the garden. White petals waited like little promises. The quartet tuned up, those first scratchy sounds that make you ache for the song. I took my father's arm in spirit. He'd passed when I was 16, but I carry him in the squared set of my shoulders and the way my chin lifts when I refuse foolishness. My mama sat front row with her Sunday hat, sending me prayers through her eyes. Our pastor stood under the oak, Bible held like a steadying hand. Julian was at the end of the aisle, handsome as a lie can be, with that smile that bends a girl's caution. I said, "I do." He said, "I do." For a blink I swear his smile dimmed, like a cloud slid over the sun. Nerves, I told myself. Nerves and the weight of vows. We kissed. Folks clapped. We floated toward the reception on the kind of laughter that makes a person believe in good. The food was a communion of sorts. Macaroni wrapped in sharp cheddar, green beans cooked right down with a bit of smoked meat, deviled eggs with too much paprika because Aunt Dee's hand gets happy. We swayed to Anita Baker, and mirrored in the window I looked like someone's dream. If you've ever held a child who's honest by default, you know how their little mouths carry truth like a pebble they feel compelled to show you. My cousin's daughter, 4 years old, barrettes clicking time, climbed into my lap between songs. "Miss Nia," she whispered, breath sweet with fruit punch. "I saw Miss Laura and Mr. Julian in the shiny plant house last night. They was gigglin'." She said it the way kids announce butterflies. My smile stayed on my face like a performance. "Thank you for telling me, baby." When she ran off, I took my notebook out beneath the table and wrote, "Child says L&J in greenhouse, late laughing." Then I drew a small star next to it, the symbol I use when an innocent eye confirms a tremor in my gut. A woman raised by women learns to watch without turning the whole room into a courtroom. I watched. Laura's laughter rang a shade higher than usual. Julian's touches on my elbow at the small of my back were the touches of a man who knows an audience is watching. When I slipped away to catch a cooler breath, the garden air cooled my skin but not my fear. I walked the path toward the greenhouse. Through the frosted glass I saw movement. 2 shadows close, then apart, then close again. The door was warm when my fingers found the handle, as if someone had just pulled away. I didn't go in. I stood there long enough to feel my own pulse and whispered to myself, "Not now. Not here." I turned back because I had guests to thank and old folks to hug and a mother to steady. At 21, you think courage is a storm. Sometimes it's a ledger. I tucked the moment into my notebook and wrote, "Ask later. Protect present." We cut the cake. When I lifted a bit of frosting toward Julian's cheek, he darted back like sweetness might burn. Laughter covered the awkward dodge, but my notebook, my mind, caught it and set it on the shelf. Night fell. The band's last chords hung in the air like a benediction. In the bridal suite, rose petals looked romantic and the twin bed in the corner looked like a mistake. I expected clumsy tenderness, laughter at our own nerves, the warm ordinary miracle of 2 people deciding to be close. Julian set his watch down with ceremony, unbuttoned his shirt, and without meeting my eyes said, "I'm beat." He lay on the small bed like the big one had done him wrong. "Julian," I said. A single word, a whole question. "Long day," he muttered, back turned. A certain kind of pain doesn't announce itself with a scream. It rearranges the furniture in your chest and waits for you to notice the couch is where the window should be. I sat on the edge of the big bed with my hands folded like a lady in a magazine, and I listened to him breathe. I stared at the ceiling until it blurred. When I finally drifted, a sound woke me, the soft, stifled kind that leaks out of secrets. A muffled laugh. A breath held too long and let go quickly. The hallway was dim. The big house exhaled old wood smells and flower ghosts. From the far end, the service passage that led toward the greenhouse entrance, I heard voices close enough to feel like my own thoughts. A woman's whisper shaped my name, the full name only folks who really know you use. "Nia." Then a man's low answer, familiar as my own hum in the kitchen. "We'll tell her." The kind of lie you say to clear your conscience without ever planning to do it. I didn't need eyes to know whose mouths made those shapes. What I felt wasn't rage first. It was smallness, like I'd been peeled down to a thin thing the air could push around. I stood there in my satin robe with Mrs. stitched across the back like a joke I wasn't allowed in on. My hand found the cool brass of the knob to the greenhouse annex. I could open it. I could throw light on them. But something older than my age told me to choose my battlefield, to gather my witnesses and my words, to speak once and precisely. I pressed my forehead to the door just long enough to let the truth settle in my bones where it wouldn't be dislodged by apology. Then I walked away. Dawn laid itself across the estate like a pale quilt. Downstairs, breakfast bustled. Coffee, fruit bowls, biscuits steaming like fresh promises. I washed my face till my skin stung and wrote one more line in the notebook. Morning, say it plainly. When I stepped into the dining room, conversations hitched. That half-second ripple when people recognize weather has changed, and they don't yet know if it's rain or a storm. I asked folks to join me in the main parlor. If you love me, I said, voice even, come sit down and hear me. My mama stood without a word, her hand finding my elbow like it used to when we crossed busy streets. My cousins filed in quiet. Church folks took chairs like it was Bible study. I stood by the big window where the light could hold me up if my knees forgot how. The room filled. The couch sank under aunties, the armchairs collected uncles. Children sat cross-legged in the middle like it was story time. But two spaces remained empty, the door and the air where Julian and Laura should have been. Their absence spoke fluent truth. My chest hurt the way a pulled muscle hurts, usable, but every movement reminded me of the strain. Family, I began, and my voice didn't tremble. 50-year-old me was standing inside 21-year-old me, lending steadiness across time. I got something to say that ain't easy, but I love y'all too much to let a lie set up shop in front of my face. Last night, on my wedding night, I heard my husband and my maid of honor together where they had no business being. I heard my name in Laura's mouth and I heard Julian promise a conversation he never meant to have. The room didn't gasp. It exhaled like a truth had finally found oxygen. My mama covered her mouth. My uncle set his jaw like a man measuring distance. A child's braid clacked against a bead as she turned to look toward the hall. No one called me a liar because lying never took root in my soil. Right then the parlor door eased open. Laura came in first, hair undone from its careful curl, lipstick faded, shoes in her hand. Behind her, Julian, collar askew, eyes searching the floor like it could hand him a script. They looked like what they were. People who had spent the night rearranging their shame into a story they hoped we'd buy. Don't say a word, I told them and held up my palm. Not yet. I reached into my robe pocket and pulled out the black notebook that had saved me from more than one sweet talk storm. I flipped to the page where their names lived next to a child's truth and the sound of my own sanity. I felt 50 and 21 at once, 50 with the wisdom of losses survived, 21 with the kind of courage that doesn't know it's supposed to be afraid. I looked from my family to the two people who had turned my wedding into a wound and said, "We gon' do this clean." In front of witnesses. With no holler and no confusion. And before a single apology could crawl out of their throats, I opened my mouth to speak the next sentence that would change the rest of my life. I was 21 in that room, but I swear I felt 1,000 years old when I lifted my chin and looked straight at Julian and Laura. My mama's eyes were wide, brimming, but she didn't move. She knew I needed to stand on my own 2 feet. My Uncle Reggie folded his arms, jaw set like stone. Little Ava, my cousin's child then, not yet my grandbaby, shifted in her seat, watching with the solemn curiosity only a child can give. Everyone waited. On my wedding night, I said, my voice steady, when the house was quiet and the flowers were still breathing, I heard my husband and my best friend whispering in the greenhouse. I heard my name. I heard enough to know the vows spoken here were a lie before the ink dried on the paper. The silence was thick. The kind that makes your heart beat louder than your words. Laura's lips trembled, but Julian, he tried to stand taller, to smooth his collar, to step forward like a man with authority. "You're mistaken, Nia," he said. "You're tired. Weddings are overwhelming." I was helping Laura, helping her. I cut him off, my tone sharper than I knew I had in me. Helping her what? Whisper my name into her hair. Helping her sneak laughter into the night while I lay alone in the bed meant for us both. Gasps rippled across the room. My mama pressed her hand harder to her mouth, like she was trying to keep from crying out. Julian shifted. His eyes darted to Laura as if she might save him, but Laura only looked down at her shoes, clutching them in her hands like they were the only truth she had left. "You gonna tell me I imagined it?" I asked. "Tell me that a child with innocent eyes didn't see the two of you slip into that greenhouse when you thought the world was asleep? You gonna tell me that my own ears betrayed me?" Julian's shoulders sagged then, the fight leaking out of him. He muttered something low. I was confused. I didn't mean. Words so weak they could barely hold themselves upright. Laura finally broke, tears streaking down her face. I'm sorry, Nia, she whispered, voice shaking. I never wanted it to go this far. I never wanted to hurt you. I looked at her, this girl who'd braided my hair before school, who'd snuck notes to me during math class, who'd cried in my lap the first time a boy broke her heart. And I realized in that instant friendship isn't just about history. It's about loyalty in the present. And hers was gone. You didn't just hurt me, I said softly. You broke something that can't be stitched back. You took what was sacred and treated it like scraps. The room felt like a church, every face watching, waiting for my next move. Pastor Reed cleared his throat, voice heavy. Truth has a way of rising, child. And once it rises, it can't be put back under the water. I closed my notebook with a snap. This marriage ends today, I said. I won't carry chains dressed up like vows. And as for you, Laura, whatever sisterhood we had, it died last night. I left the estate that morning still in my gown, the hem dirt-stained, my veil crumpled in my hand. The road stretched long before me, dew lifting off the fields like ghosts. I walked barefoot until my cousin's car pulled up beside me. He didn't ask questions, just opened the passenger door and drove me back to my mama's house. For weeks, I moved like someone underwater. Mama cooked pots of collards, fried cornbread in the skillet, slid plates in front of me. Simone, my daughter, still just a baby then, would pat my cheek with her little hand as if she knew Mama's heart was cracking open. At night, I'd sit on the porch with my notebook, scribbling down everything I remembered, every detail, every word. Writing it made me feel less like I was drowning. But shame moves through a community like smoke. Whispers slid from the beauty salon to the church pews, from the corner store to the basketball court. That Jenkins girl took Nia's man. Julian ain't worth the dirt on his shoes. Bless her heart, poor Nia. Folks meant well, but pity felt like another wound. I went down to the courthouse and filed for annulment. The clerk looked at me over her glasses, eyes soft, and stamped the papers. Good for you, honey, she murmured. Better to cut it clean than to let it fester. Julian tried to come by once, stood on my mama's porch with flowers from the grocery store, face drawn and tired. I made a mistake, Nia, he said. We can work this out. I stepped outside, shut the door behind me. The mistake, I told him, was thinking I needed you to make me whole. I was already whole before you. He didn't answer, just lowered his eyes and walked away. Months passed. Laura tried, 2 letters slipped under my door. Phone calls I never answered. The last letter I opened began with, I can't live without your friendship. I tore it in half because the truth is she had already lived without it the moment she chose betrayal. Life wasn't easy after that. Money was tight, my heart was tired, and the little seamstress shop I dreamed of opening felt like a far-off star. But my family rallied. Uncle Reggie found me extra work hemming uniforms. Mama prayed over me every morning before I left the house. My church sisters brought casseroles and slipped $20 bills into my Bible when they thought I wasn't looking. Slowly I rebuilt. I saved, I stitched, I studied. I put one foot in front of the other until the girl in the mirror began to look like herself again. Not a bride abandoned, but a woman standing. And just when I thought I'd finally left the ashes behind, word reached me. Julian and Laura had moved in together, walking around like nothing had happened, like their love was real, flaunting it as if betrayal could blossom into forever. But life has a way of showing the cracks. Within months, neighbors whispered of shouting matches, slammed doors, Laura crying on the porch while Julian stormed off. What had burned hot in secrecy cooled quick in daylight. By the year's end, Julian was gone, left her with nothing but a note and a trail of lies, chasing another woman younger and hungrier. Laura was left hollow, abandoned by the very man she'd torn her world apart to have. And me? I was still standing, sewing dresses, raising Simone, learning that dignity doesn't come from who stands beside you. It comes from who you refuse to become when the fire comes. Years later, when I was 30, I opened my first little shop on Hull Street, Nia's Needle and Thread. Customers came with pants to hem, from gowns to altar, dreams stitched into fabric. I poured myself into that work and into Simone, who grew into a young woman with her own light. Every time I locked up at night, Turn the sign to closed. I'd whisper to myself, see girl? You made it through. But I won't lie to you, the scar was there. Trust didn't come easy. Smiles looked suspicious. Promises felt heavy in my hands. And then, one spring Sunday when Simone was grown and I was almost 40, something happened that reminded me the story wasn't finished. Because betrayal can break you. But sometimes, just sometimes, it sets the stage for a different kind of love to walk in, one you never saw coming. Before I take you there, if my story touches your heart, please subscribe so more voices like mine can be heard. I was nearly 40 when he walked into my shop, Daniel Jackson. I remember it clear as sunlight on polished wood. I just finished pinning the hem of a prom dress for one of the church girls when the bell over the door chimed. He was tall, not in the way that makes a man loom but in the way that makes a room breathe differently. Carried himself quiet, confident but not loud with it. He set a suit bag on the counter and said, "Ma'am, I heard you're the one to see if a man wants to look sharp." I laughed, a short surprised sound. "Depends on the man," I said. That was the start. He wasn't the type to pour out sweet lines like Julian. Daniel listened. Really listened. Asked about fabric, about business, about Simone, about the way I liked my tea. He didn't push. He showed up steady, bringing respect in his silence and sincerity in his questions. With him, I didn't feel like I had to shrink or stretch to fit somebody's idea of love. I could just be. We started slow. Coffee after church. Walks down Hull Street when the shops were closing and the neon buzzed low. He never asked about Julian at first, didn't dig into my past like it was gossip to chew. One evening, sitting on my porch while the air smelled like honeysuckle and summer sweat, he finally said, "Nia, I don't need to know who hurt you to know I ain't him. I'm here to know you." That broke something open. Not in a painful way, more like a locked window finally sliding free. By then, Simone was a woman of her own, studying nursing, Ava toddling around with a laugh that filled every room. Watching my daughter mother her daughter gave me a strength I didn't even know I still had. And Daniel, well, he became part of the rhythm without trying. He'd hold Ava on his knee at Sunday dinners while my mama passed cornbread. He'd help me close the shop, sweeping the floor like he'd been born to stand beside me, not above me. It wasn't fireworks. It was peace. And I tell you, peace after a storm feels more powerful than fire ever could. One day years later, Julian appeared again. By then I had 2 stores, my name printed in a trade magazine for rising entrepreneurs, and Daniel's picture tucked into a frame on my dresser. Julian looked worn down. Suit wrinkled, eyes empty, words heavy with regret. He came to the shop, leaned on my counter like time could rewind. "Nia," he said, voice thin, "I've been thinking about you. About us. I made mistakes. I see that now." I folded my arms. "Julian, the man you betrayed is gone. And the woman you betrayed? She grew into someone you don't recognize. So you can carry your apologies somewhere else." His mouth twitched like he wanted to argue. But he saw it, saw the steel in me, saw the peace standing behind my eyes, saw that his shadow no longer reached me. He left without another word. And that was the last time I saw him. As for Laura, her name became a whisper that faded. Folks said she drifted from place to place, carrying her loneliness like a suitcase too heavy to set down. I didn't chase the story. Some ghosts are better left uninvited. Now I sit here, 50 years old, Ava grown into a young woman with her own laugh, Simone proud in her nurse's uniform, Daniel still steady beside me. My hands, these same hands that stitched gowns and pieced quilts and wrote truth in a little black notebook, hold a cup of tea on the terrace as the sun sets. Peace doesn't sound like fireworks. It sounds like silence shared with someone who sees you. I keep a box in my closet with pieces of that old day. A pressed flower, a stained scrap of lace, a photo with smiles that weren't real. I don't keep it to torture myself. I keep it to remind me of the girl who survived, who rebuilt, who refused to let betrayal be the period at the end of her sentence. At 21, I thought love was a promise made at an altar. At 50, I know love is choosing yourself first so that when the right person comes along, they don't save you, they stand with you. So I tell you, if you're walking through heartbreak now, if betrayal has left you on a dirt road in a torn gown, don't mistake that road for your end. It may just be your beginning. This was my story. Now tell me, what part touched your heart the most?